They laughed at her shoes, mocked her uniform, and whispered cruel jokes behind her back. To them she was just the janitor, black, invisible, unworthy. But they had no idea who she really was, and when the truth came out, those same spoiled rich kids couldn't stop crying. At Westwood Academy, a gleaming prep school for the ultra-wealthy, everything sparkled, except for the people they looked down on. Nestled in the heart of an upscale suburb, Westwood boasted marble floors, tailored uniforms, and students who arrived in Teslas and chauffeured BMWs. These were the sons and daughters of CEOs, hedge fund billionaires, politicians, and old money elites. And in their world, people like Miss Gloria Johnson didn't exist beyond cleaning toilets and pushing mop buckets. Gloria was the night janitor. A woman in her early 60s with kind eyes, a gentle smile, and worn hands that told stories she never spoke aloud. Each night, while the students crammed for Ivy League futures or partied behind the dean's back, Gloria would sweep through hallways humming hymns, her dark uniform blending into the shadows. But she saw everything. She remembered names, faces, and conversations they assumed no one heard. The students never looked her in the eye, except for a few like Julian Patel, a scholarship student who often nodded politely and thanked her with sincerity. But the rest? Especially the Crown Four, a nickname for the wealthiest, most entitled clique in school, Lance Whitaker, Brielle Van Houten, Chase Morgan, and Tiffany Sinclair, treated her like background noise. One Tuesday night, Gloria was scrubbing the floor near the science wing when she overheard them joking in the lounge. "She probably lives in a trash can," Tiffany laughed. "Or under a bridge," Chase added. "Seriously, do you think she even knows how to read?" Lance chimed in, making Brielle nearly spit out her green juice in laughter. They thought it was harmless. Just another joke about the janitor. Gloria didn't flinch, didn't scold, didn't even turn around. She just kept scrubbing. But that night, as she stood alone in the janitor's closet, a worn newspaper clipping fell from her bag. A faded headline read, "First Black Female Engineer to Lead NASA Project Retires Quietly." The photo underneath? A younger Gloria, beaming in a white lab coat. But that was another life, a life she had buried years ago. The students knew none of it, how she walked away from science, from public life, from awards and stages, all because of a tragedy that broke her spirit. But that story was about to surface again. The next morning, Principal Ramirez called an emergency assembly. "We're honored to announce a very special guest for our Career Legacy series," he said. "Someone whose impact on history, innovation, and resilience is unparalleled. Please welcome Miss Gloria Johnson." The room fell into stunned silence. Students looked around, confused. Was this some mistake? The janitor? When Gloria walked out onto the stage, no mop in hand, but instead wearing a sleek black suit and holding a clicker for a PowerPoint, even the teachers froze. Gasps echoed through the auditorium. I know her," whispered an older teacher in the back. "Gloria Johnson." "The Gloria Johnson?" Tiffany's mouth dropped open. Chase blinked in disbelief. Lance scoffed, "There's no way." But Brielle's face had gone ghost white. Gloria calmly stepped to the microphone, clicked the remote, and the screen behind her lit up with the image of a space shuttle. "Good morning. Some of you know me as the janitor. But what you didn't know is that I once helped send astronauts to space." And just like that, every single one of the Crown Four was pinned to their seats by the weight of their ignorance. She told her story with quiet power. How she grew up in Alabama, raised by grandparents who couldn't read but believed in her brilliance. How she faced racism, sexism, and rejection, yet pushed through to become a top engineer at NASA. How she led a pioneering team on a mission that made global headlines. And how, after losing her only son, Marcus, in a tragic military accident, she left the spotlight to live a simpler life. "Sometimes," she said softly, "when you've lost everything, peace isn't found in fame, it's found in service." Julian wiped a tear from his eye. Even teachers were misty-eyed. But not everyone accepted it. Later that day, Lance pulled his clique into the locker room. "There's no way she did all that," he said. "She's just trying to get attention." Chase nodded. "Maybe it's a stunt by the school." "I bet she faked those photos," Tiffany muttered. Brielle stayed silent. But the next day the local news showed up. So did a journalist from the Washington Herald, and a retired astronaut who confirmed every detail. "She's a national treasure," he said on camera. "You're lucky to have her here." That afternoon, Gloria's former colleagues arrived for a surprise visit. Scientists, engineers, and one woman who credited Gloria for changing her life. But just as the school began to embrace her legacy, someone in the shadows was planning something cruel. Lance wasn't done. "If she's real," he sneered to the group, "let's see how she handles this." That night, while Gloria was walking home in the rain, a luxury SUV pulled up beside her. The window rolled down. "Need a ride, Janitor?" Lance grinned. Before she could decline, two masked figures jumped out of the back seat and grabbed her purse, shoving her to the ground. "Next time, stay in your place," one of them shouted before speeding off. The next morning she didn't show up to school. Her locker was left open. Her office, empty. Principal Ramirez called her cell, no answer. Julian noticed the bruises on her knuckles and the blood on the sidewalk near the school gate. "Something's wrong," he said. But the police called it a probable mugging. Case closed. Just another old woman robbed. But Julian didn't buy it. Neither did Brielle, who began to distance herself from the others. That weekend, she secretly visited Gloria's old neighborhood. There she met Miss Evelyn, an elderly neighbor who said Gloria hadn't come home. "She's not one to disappear," Evelyn said. "But if someone's after her, it wouldn't be the first time. She made enemies in high places." Back at school, rumors swirled. A petition to honor Gloria was circulating. Some wanted her to be awarded publicly. But others, including Lance and his father, a powerful tech investor and donor to the school, wanted her name erased. "She's stirring up trouble," Mr. Whitaker told the board. "She's not who she says she is." But the board received an anonymous email that night. Attached were classified documents, testimonials, and verified credentials. Gloria was who she claimed to be, and more. Still, she was nowhere to be found. Until a week later, during another assembly, Principal Ramirez received a call. He paused mid-sentence, then turned to the mic. "Excuse me, students, we have an urgent announcement." At that moment, the auditorium doors burst open, and everyone turned to see. Janice had barely stepped into the corridor before the laughter erupted behind her again. But this time it wasn't muffled giggles, it was unashamed, loud cackling. Olivia Chambers, the queen bee of Crestmore Academy, stood near her locker, flanked by her ever-loyal entourage. A phone screen was pointed at Janice. A video was playing. The video. The one from the cafeteria. The clip where the mop had slipped from Janice's hand, and she'd caught herself clumsily on the table edge. Someone had added circus music. "That's our Janitor Jackson, y'all," Olivia announced, doubling over in laughter. "Someone give her an Oscar." The hallway filled with the echo of mocking laughter as students gathered around. Janice's heart sank. Her hands clenched around her mop handle. The students had gone too far, but she didn't lash out. She didn't scream. She didn't even frown. She gave a small, controlled smile. Because something inside her was shifting. Back in the supply closet, Janice sat alone during her break, her thermos of tea untouched. She looked at her trembling hands, hands that had once drafted legal contracts, negotiated corporate mergers, and signed seven-figure grants. Hands that now smelled of bleach and bore the rough texture of years in silence. It hadn't always been this way. Her phone buzzed. It was from a blocked number. A simple message. "We need to talk. AG." Her eyes widened. AG. Only one person used those initials that way, Angela Green, the director of the Crestmore Foundation. An old friend from another life. Meanwhile, in the student lounge, Olivia and her friends continued their cruel fun. "Y'all, I bet she sleeps in the boiler room," one boy snorted. "I heard she eats leftover cafeteria food," another said. "Let's give her a taste of Crestmore generosity," Olivia said, holding up a sealed bag of half-eaten chips. "A snack for our beloved help." More laughter. But one student, Maya Patel, wasn't laughing. Maya, an honors student on scholarship, quietly watched the scene unfold. Her parents had immigrated from India with barely enough to survive. Maya knew what it felt like to be underestimated. Something about the way Janice carried herself, the quiet dignity, bothered her. No one ever asked Janice about her story. And maybe that was the problem. Later that week, the headmaster, Dr. Alvin Royce, was scheduled to meet with Angela Green about funding. Crestmore had been courting a mysterious benefactor for months. What no one knew, what no one even imagined, was that Janice had founded the very nonprofit under discussion, the Lions Legacy Fund. Angela had tried to convince Janice to return to the spotlight for years. But Janice had refused. Until now. She sent one message back to Angela. Let's shake their world. Friday came. The buzz of activity filled the school. A special assembly had been announced. Students speculated wildly. In the janitor's closet, Janice opened a small lockbox. Inside, an envelope stamped with the presidential seal. A faded photo of her late husband in uniform. And her original Columbia Law School diploma. She ran her fingers over the edge of the paper. It was time. The auditorium buzzed with students, teachers, and faculty. Olivia sat near the front, looking bored. Dr. Royce stood at the podium. Today we welcome an extraordinary guest. Someone who has given greatly to education, civil rights, and public service. Angela Green took the stage and began speaking of justice, perseverance, and legacy. And now, I'd like to introduce the founder of the Lions Legacy Fund. A woman whose quiet power has changed more lives than most can imagine. Please welcome Ms. Janice Lyons. Gasps filled the room. Every head turned. Janice walked up the steps in a navy blue suit, heels clicking like a metronome of purpose. Her afro was neat, her posture regal. Maya's mouth fell open. Olivia blinked, then laughed nervously. That's the janitor, she whispered. But no one was laughing now. Janice stepped to the microphone. Some of you know me as the woman who mops your floors. Who picks up your trash. Who smiles when you throw slurs like confetti. The room went silent. But before I was your janitor, I was a civil rights attorney. I sat across from Supreme Court justices. I advised senators. And I founded the very fund that's about to pay for 10 full-ride scholarships, right here at Crestmore. Dr. Royce's eyes widened. Janice continued. I took this job not because I had to, but because I wanted to see who you really were. Not your resumes. Not your money. But your character. She paused. And some of you failed that test. Her eyes briefly met Olivia's. The girl looked like she'd seen a ghost. After the assembly, pandemonium broke out. Students buzzed with shock. Teachers were stunned. Olivia tried to save face. She's just pretending. No way a janitor is rich. She's faking. But Maya wasn't fooled. And neither was Angela Green, who calmly handed Janice a folder. They want to meet. All of them. Janice nodded. Let's remind them who writes the checks. That evening, Janice met with the board of Crestmore. She didn't just attend, she led the meeting. She opened her proposal. A new scholarship program, a cultural sensitivity initiative, and mandatory diversity training for all students and staff. She had one final condition. I choose the first 4 students to receive scholarships. Everyone nodded. She smiled. She already had someone in mind. But just as things were about to change for good, a security guard burst into the boardroom, breathless. Ms. Lyons, there's an urgent situation. A student collapsed. It's Maya Patel. Janice stood up so fast her chair fell over. Where is she? The guard hesitated. They're saying it might be poisoning. The room froze. Janice didn't wait for permission. She rushed from the boardroom, her heels clicking furiously down the polished marble floors of Crestmore's West Wing. The words, might be poisoning, echoed in her mind like a siren. Janice's instincts took over, not as a janitor, not even as a lawyer, but as a mother who had lost a child once before and swore she'd never let another fall without doing something. As she pushed through the infirmary doors, she saw Maya Patel lying pale and trembling on a hospital cot, her skin clammy and eyes half shut. A paramedic hovered nearby, prepping in 4 bag, while the school nurse barked instructions over the phone. What happened? Janice demanded, stepping forward. The nurse looked up, momentarily confused. Are you? I'm the one who brought Maya here. Speak. She collapsed in the cafeteria. Some kind of allergic reaction, hives, swelling. She could barely breathe. We administered epinephrine, but she's still reacting. We're waiting on the ambulance. Janice's eyes darted to Maya's trembling hands. The signs were clear. Where's her EpiPen? She didn't have one, the nurse replied. She told her friends she has a nut allergy, but nothing was logged in the school system. Janice took Maya's hand gently. Hold on, baby girl. Just breathe. Maya stirred. Miss Janice? I'm here. I didn't eat anything weird. I swear. And just like that, a thread began to unravel in Janice's mind. She knew this wasn't an accident. That evening, Janice sat quietly in Maya's hospital room. The girl was stable now, thank God, but sedated. Her parents, frantic and exhausted, had finally stepped out to call family back home. Janice couldn't shake the feeling. Someone had done this. On purpose. When Maya's phone buzzed on the bedside table, Janice hesitated, then picked it up. It was a message from an unknown number. Hope you enjoyed your treat. Let's see how your precious janitor likes that. Smiley face. Her blood ran cold. She copied the number and texted it to Angela with one instruction: trace this. Now. Within minutes, Angela responded, number belongs to an Olivia Chambers burner. Got it through her brother's account. She's in deep. Janice stared out the window, her heart pounding. Olivia Chambers had gone too far. This wasn't just bullying anymore. This was criminal. The next day, Olivia sat in the courtyard surrounded by her clique, acting as if nothing had happened. Her designer sunglasses shielded her eyes, but not her arrogance. When word spread that Maya had survived, Olivia rolled her eyes. Whatever. She faked it for attention. She's just trying to make the janitor look like a hero. But her confidence started to crack when she was summoned to the principal's office. Alone. Inside, Janice stood beside Dr. Royce, arms folded, face unreadable. Miss Chambers, Royce began, we have reason to believe you were involved in the incident with Miss Patel. Olivia scoffed. This is ridiculous. Janice took a step forward. We have text messages traced to your device. Do you deny sending this message? She displayed a printout. Olivia paled but stayed silent. We're giving you one chance, Janice continued. Confess now and we'll handle this through school disciplinary procedures. But if you lie... I want a lawyer, Olivia snapped. Janice raised an eyebrow. Good. I am one. Outside, word spread like wildfire. Students whispered about the investigation. Olivia's friends started backing away, afraid they'd be implicated. And for the first time in her charmed life, Olivia was alone. Meanwhile, Janice called a private meeting with Maya, who had returned to school after a few days. Her voice was still weak, but her spirit wasn't. Why did Olivia target you? Janice asked gently. She said I was embarrassing the school, Maya replied. Because I talked to you. Said people like you didn't belong at Crestmore. That I didn't either. Janice's chest tightened. She'd heard that kind of poison before, from boardrooms, news anchors, and even allies. Well, she's wrong. And we're going to prove it. Janice moved swiftly. Within a week, she and Angela launched a new campaign through the Lions Legacy Fund, Invisible No More, a scholarship and advocacy platform highlighting overlooked school workers, janitors, cafeteria workers, aides. For the first time in Crestmore's history, these employees were being publicly honored, and the students were forced to confront their silent labor. A documentary team came in. Janice spoke on camera, not as a humble cleaner but as a founder, activist, and survivor. I worked in silence so they could speak louder. But silence is no longer an option. The board approved funding to expand the campaign across the district. Media attention exploded. And still Janice kept digging. Because Olivia wasn't acting alone. One night Angela called her. I've been following the trail. You were right. There's more. Olivia's father, Greg Chambers, is tied to the Crestmore donor list. He's funneled money through shell nonprofits. And he's the one who got you assigned as janitor when you applied anonymously 2 years ago. Janice's jaw clenched. He placed me here? Like a pawn? Worse. He called it a teaching moment for the help. His words. A fire ignited in Janice's chest. Greg Chambers, a man who had smiled in her face at fundraisers and patted her on the shoulder in public, had orchestrated this whole thing. He thought hiding her under a mop would break her. Now he was about to see what happened when a lioness roared. The following week, the school announced a gala for their new diversity initiative. Janice was to be honored, publicly. Cameras would roll. Press would attend. Janice made one quiet phone call. Greg? It's Janice. I'd love to have a word. In person. Greg laughed over the phone. Of course, Janice. I'm glad you found your purpose. I have. But I think you're the one who's about to lose yours. Gala night arrived. Janice entered in a floor-length emerald gown, her silver earrings glittering like stars. The room went silent. Crestmore's elite, staff, board members, donors, and parents all turned to stare. This wasn't the janitor. This was royalty. Greg Chambers stood near the bar, drink in hand, his face slowly falling. Angela approached him, smiling. "We have something to show you." A giant screen flickered to life. Security footage played. It showed Greg in a heated conversation with the principal, 2 years ago, demanding Janice not be allowed to teach or advise, only to clean and stay invisible. Gasps filled the room. A reporter whispered, "That's Greg Chambers, right? He's on the board." Greg's face went crimson. Janice stepped up to the microphone. "There's something freeing about being underestimated. People assume silence means ignorance. That janitor means irrelevant. But let me be clear, the greatest power is not shouting your worth, it's knowing it even when others don't." Applause erupted. Greg tried to leave. But 2 security guards blocked his path. Angela stepped forward. "Gregory Chambers, you're under investigation for embezzlement, academic interference, and civil rights violations." Greg's mouth dropped. "You set me up," he hissed at Janice. She looked him dead in the eye. "No. You dug your own grave. I just gave you the shovel." But just when it seemed justice had prevailed, a loud crash echoed from outside the ballroom. A staff member ran in breathless. "There's a fire. It started in the West Wing." Panic swept through the crowd. Smoke curled through the hallway doors. Sirens wailed outside. Janice turned toward Angela, who was already pulling her phone out. "What happened?" Angela's eyes were wide. The fire alarms were disabled. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. Janice's blood ran cold. Then another staff member rushed in. "It's the janitor's closet, it was torched. And there's something you need to see." Janice and Angela pushed through the crowd into the hallway. There, on the wall near the scorched utility room, written in black spray paint, "Lions can burn too." Janice stared at it. Her past was trying to erase her again. But she wasn't going anywhere. The moment Clara Mae stepped off that private elevator, every eye turned. The gala in the Prescott Hall Auditorium was in full swing. Champagne flutes clinked, laughter echoed off the high ceilings, and the elite students of Fairfield Academy posed beside marble statues and scholarship plaques with names they didn't know the meaning of. Among them were Lexi Prescott, Chase Daniels, and Jordan Klein, the self-proclaimed Fairfield royalty, holding court in the center of the ballroom like they owned the building. Their laughter was loud, their jokes petty, and their mocking glances shot like daggers across the room. Then silence fell. Clara Mae stood tall, no longer in her janitor's uniform but in an elegant emerald green evening gown, her hair styled, her posture proud, a golden pendant catching the light against her chest. Some students whispered. Others gasped. Lexi choked on her drink. Chase stared like he had seen a ghost. Jordan whispered, "Is that the janitor?" Clara Mae's voice sliced through the room, calm and commanding. "Good evening. My name is Clara Mae Williams. I am honored to be your keynote speaker tonight, and yes, I used to clean this very floor you're standing on." The crowd froze. The professors at the edge of the room clapped slowly in astonishment. Dean Whitmore smiled knowingly. Lexi's jaw dropped as Clara took her place at the podium. "Let me tell you a story," she began, her voice resonating like a song of strength through the hushed hall. "Once there was a little black girl raised by her grandmother in the South. She cleaned houses before she learned to read. She dreamed beneath roofs leaking from rain. But she held on to hope like it was stitched into her skin." She scanned the audience, locking eyes with Lexi, who was trembling now. "That girl grew up, put herself through school, earned a law degree, became one of the most powerful litigators in corporate America, and founded a nonprofit that now funds education for underserved youth. That girl was me." A murmur spread. Phones buzzed. Some students sat down in shock. Others stared in awe. Clara continued, revealing her full history, how after retiring early she returned to the campus of her first rejection as a janitor to observe the heart of inequality, not just from the outside but from within. "I wanted to see if the future leaders of our country were worth the titles they carried," she said, turning toward the front row. Lexi was pale, her father stiff beside her, arms crossed, eyes locked in rage. "And I saw cruelty, entitlement, arrogance." Clara paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "But I also saw promise." She gestured toward a corner of the room where Tanya, the scholarship student Clara had mentored in secret, stood in stunned reverence, eyes brimming with tears. "Tanya Matthews, please come forward." Tanya approached slowly. Clara wrapped an arm around her. "Tanya has shown more leadership, grace and intelligence than any boardroom I've ever walked into. And she will be the first recipient of the Clara Mae Williams Legacy Fellowship, covering her full tuition, travel and mentorship through law school." The room erupted. Some students clapped. Some cried. Even a few professors wiped their eyes. But Lexi Prescott didn't move. Her lips curled, arms still folded, and her father muttered to her, "Don't you dare let her humiliate this family." Clara saw it. She looked Lexi straight in the eye and said, "Miss Prescott, would you like to come up and say something? Or would you prefer I play the audio clip of what you said to me the night you spilled your drink on me and laughed?" Lexi's face drained of color. Chase and Jordan stepped away from her like she carried a disease. Lexi shook her head slowly. "That's what I thought," Clara said, her voice ice. Dean Whitmore stepped forward and announced that Clara Mae's name would be permanently added to the Fairfield Hall of Honor. Students clapped louder. But in the shadows near the back, Mr. Prescott, the father, pulled out his phone and made a call. "We're going to ruin her," he hissed. "She wants a war? She'll get it." Clara walked off the stage as Tanya hugged her, whispering, "You changed my life." But as she walked past the glowing crowd, she felt something wrong, an energy shift, a storm brewing. Lexi had vanished. Mr. Prescott's eyes followed Clara like a hawk watching prey. Later that night, as Clara returned to her modest apartment just off campus, a manila envelope was waiting on her doorstep. Inside was a copy of an old court case, sealed documents, confidential files, and a note in red ink. "Let's see how perfect you really are, Ms. Williams." Clara froze, recognizing the case instantly. Her hands trembled. The secret she thought was buried was about to be exposed. Clara Mae stared at the documents in her trembling hands as the wind howled outside her apartment window, rustling the edges of the manila folder like a warning. Her heart pounded against her chest like a drum of buried guilt resurrected. It was a case from decades ago, a court battle she had fought as a young attorney, one that nearly broke her before she ever truly began. It was sealed for a reason. Her name wasn't on the front cover, but her actions were buried deep in the footnotes of the arguments. And now someone had unearthed it. She paced the room, gripping her chest as old ghosts whispered in her ears. She had won that case by exposing a corrupt executive, but in doing so, she had made a choice. She'd followed her firm's demand to suppress a testimony that could have protected a black factory worker who ended up serving time for a crime committed by someone else. It haunted her for years, and it was the reason she left her firm early, retired before the peak, and stepped into humility as a janitor. She had spent the last decade quietly atoning, funding the man's release, helping his children through school, building opportunities in silence. But she had never gone public. Because she didn't know if the world would understand the pressures a young black woman faced in a white-led firm with her career on the line. But now Mr. Prescott had it. And he wasn't after justice, he wanted revenge. She heard a knock at the door. It was Dean Whitmore. He entered with a heavy sigh. "They sent this to the board," he said, handing her another copy of the file. "And to a few press contacts." Clara nodded, already expecting it. "They want to destroy your legacy, Clara." She stood straight. "Then let them try. But I won't run from my past." The next day Fairfield was buzzing. Social media was exploding with headlines: Gala honoree's legal scandal exposed, Fairfield's janitor turned philanthropist linked to wrongful conviction. Students whispered in corridors. Professors exchanged worried glances. Lexi Prescott posted a smug Instagram story, winking with the caption, "Truth always wins." But Clara was one step ahead. That evening she called a press conference in the very hall where she'd been honored just days before. Cameras filled the room. Students, reporters and staff gathered, unsure what to expect. Clara took the stage, this time not in a gown, not in uniform, but in a simple navy suit. "You've all read the headlines. So let me give you the full truth." The room fell silent. She told the story, honestly, painfully, without spin. She spoke of the pressure she felt as a young black attorney, the way her voice was dismissed unless it served power, and the night she chose to stay silent instead of fighting a battle that could have ended her before she began. She admitted her shame. But then she explained everything she had done since, quietly funding the exoneration of the man who was wrongfully convicted, helping him start a business, mentoring his children, even legally representing other clients pro bono through her nonprofit. "I am not a perfect woman," she said. "But I am not the woman they are trying to paint either. I spent my life repairing what was broken. And I stand before you today not as a victim, but as someone who has faced both justice and injustice and still chooses to do what is right." Tanya stepped forward and read a letter from the man who had been wrongfully convicted. It praised Clara for her courage, her support, and for helping him rebuild his life. The letter ended with, "She never left me behind. Even when the system did." The room erupted into applause. Reporters lowered their cameras, many with tears in their eyes. Students, even those who once mocked her, stood to their feet. But it wasn't over. That evening, Lexi Prescott was called into the dean's office. Her recording from the gala was being investigated. Clara had submitted evidence of her harassment, her racial slurs, and her attempts to sabotage other students, including Tanya. And this time, Lexi couldn't squirm out of it. Her father, Mr. Prescott, tried to use his influence to block the inquiry, but it backfired. One of Clara's former allies from the legal world, a now prominent civil rights attorney, stepped in to defend her publicly, and when the Prescotts pushed harder, their private firm was audited. Investigations revealed that Mr. Prescott's company had numerous violations of labor law and discrimination complaints. The media storm flipped. The Prescotts were now the villains. Lexi was suspended. Mr. Prescott was charged with obstruction and corporate misconduct. Meanwhile, Fairfield Academy released a statement applauding Clara Mae Williams' transparency and integrity, officially naming a new leadership scholarship after her. Tanya was its first recipient. Weeks later, the school hosted a memorial dedication in the courtyard, unveiling a bronze plaque that read, "Clara Mae Williams, fighter, mentor, survivor, believer." Students gathered around her, seeking her guidance. Professors asked for her insight. Even the janitorial staff looked at her with tears in their eyes. She never stopped acknowledging them. Clara returned to her roots, not as a janitor this time but as an advisor, a speaker, and a beacon. And every week she sat with students like Tanya and others once laughed at, for their background, their clothes, their dreams, and reminded them that they were worthy, that they had purpose, that the laughers would one day answer to those they mocked. And as she walked the halls of Fairfield now, heads didn't turn in mockery, but in reverence. The woman once laughed at by spoiled students had become the soul of the campus. Her secret hadn't destroyed her, it had completed her redemption. Never judge a person by the uniform they wear or the role they appear to play. Behind every so-called invisible worker lies a story of resilience, dignity, and untold brilliance. Those who laugh at others often do so from ignorance, and when the truth rises, it humbles even the proudest. Real power isn't in the title you carry, but in the life you choose to build and the lives you choose to uplift. Clara Mae Williams showed us that your past doesn't define you, what you do with it does. The end.